All right, here we go, everyone. Another awesome episode of the All Around Adventure podcast. And joining me today, I have Caresa Lamers, who is a bit of a spontaneous traveler, someone I've been connected to for a good while, and I'm looking forward to hearing her stories today. So, Caresa, thanks so much for taking time for joining me today, and welcome to the All Around Adventure podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here today. I know we've been trying to do this podcast for a while now.
Yeah, for sure. But it just seems like you and I have like so much going on. Of course, you're tackling a lot of things right now, not only in your personal life, but then you're trying to fit in your own travels. And it seems like as soon as you come back from your travels, I'm bumping out on my own for work or something. So it's hard to get the two worlds to line up, isn't it?
Yeah, it's definitely been hard with our schedules, but we finally made it. So here we are. I'm excited to tell you my story and about my travels. And I cannot wait for this pandemic to be over for, like actual travel to be opened up again, because all these borders being closed down has been making me go stir crazy.
Yeah, you and me both. But from what it looks like, I think with the distribution of the vaccine going out there a little bit more and kind of just, I've been talking with some of my contacts in other countries, like in places like Europe. It's looking like there's light at the end of the tunnel here. So hopefully before too long, we'll be able to bump out again for sure. But, and I think we're going to kind of maybe talk about that, some future plans here later on in this conversation. But kind of starting out, though, I want to go back in time a little bit. Every great story has a beginning, and that's where I'd like to start with you as well. So, let's just go back a little bit. And can you just kind of tell us, what was it initially that inspired you to become a world traveler?
I've always, since I've been a kid, like as a child, I've been taught kind of almost like everyone else to, go to school and then find like your career and, then buy a house, build a family. But life has always had so much more meaning to me, to where I just didn't think that we're meant to, sit at a desk and work a 9 to 5 up until retirement, if we even make it this far, and then hope that we'll have time like then to be able to travel. And I've always had like a passion and a love for different cultures, and just really honestly like living your life to the fullest, which is one of the messages like through my platform, my blog and my Instagram, and even like my personal Facebook. I always talk about how important it is to really live your life, as if today was like your last day, which I know it's like very cliche and corny to say because like you hear it all the time, but it's so true that, like we never know when our last day is going to be. And I think people are so like concerned about the future or like making money that they forget to actually live their life. And to me, traveling, it's the best way that someone can live their life, like just going out and exploring like other things besides their own backyard and getting to see how other people live in different countries and how it's so different. And I think that's one of the things that just created my love for traveling. And yeah, like I love it. It's always something new, and I get to meet so many amazing people. So
yeah, definitely. And, you make a very interesting point, that whole idea of as soon as you make it through high school, you go to college, you find that career, you work up that career, you buy the house with the white picket fence, with the Labrador in the front yard, and start a family. And, sometimes, and I'm not going to say everyone thinks that that's like the way you're supposed to do it, but it does seem like that there is a bit of a societal expectation that that's kind of how you're supposed to go about your life, the quote unquote normal life, if you will. Yeah. So when you kind of started making this decision that you wanted to, do something besides that, like you mentioned, you want to go out and explore the world, you want to spend time abroad, and, maybe it takes a while before you kind of start, settling down, if you will. And again, I put that in air quotes. When you kind of started letting people in your life know that this is what you wanted, how were you kind of perceived? I would imagine that you talking about you want to live your life in the way that you have been, maybe, I don't know if backlash is the right word, but I'm sure some people had some things to say about that. What was your experience like?
I was actually going to exactly use that word, backlash. I mean, I've had a lot of like positive responses. I've had people tell me that I'm crazy or it's not safe, especially as like a woman traveler, you know, like, because a lot of times I'll go by myself. And then I've also had like a lot of negative comments saying like this isn't like what I'm supposed to be doing, or that I should be focusing on different things. But I don't know. I feel like everyone, like in the end, I know some people whose dream it is to have a family and they don't ever want to travel. So I just think I just let people know that this is my dream, and really nothing that anyone can say or do would ever change that. But definitely a lot of backlash from a lot of people. Like even to this day, like if sometimes I'll post pictures and I'll get comments like, oh, must be nice to be able to do this. And to me, it's just really a matter of prioritizing your life and like what you want to do.
Yeah, exactly. And even though you and I, we may choose to kind of live this life of travel and vagabonding and everything like that, it doesn't mean that those who choose to do something else are wrong either. Like,
Yeah.
one of my best friends from high school, you know, he's my age, he's in his mid 30s, and he has 5 children. And it's like one of those things where we don't look at each other's life with like disdain. We're just like, man, I'm glad that you're happy. I'm glad that you found something that makes you happy. And if that does mean, yes, settling down and starting a family, awesome. I just want you to be happy with that too. But neither one is wrong. They're just different, you know?
Very different. And yeah, I know so many people who like all they ever wanted was just to have kids and, you know, just have a home with like a family. And I guess I'm just built different. I mean, but I definitely don't think any way of living. I think my whole thing is I just want people to live their dreams, whether it's having a family, having a dog, having a fish, or traveling, or just like whatever makes you happy. Like you should go out and do that. I'm just a free spirit like that.
All right, right on. Well, I want to go back to something that you mentioned just now. Excuse me. Is you know, you kind of brought up safety, where some people were wondering if it's actually safe for you to go out there and travel the world. And this is something that I like to ask a lot of the women that come on my show, because you know, I've had a lot of women in my life, when they hear about my own travel experiences, you know, they're fascinated about the idea of getting out in the world and seeing things, but they're often afraid to do so, you know, because they may hear about something crazy happening in other parts of the world. So they're kind of afraid to bump out there, especially by themselves. So what I was hoping I could ask you is, like, early on when you kind of started traveling, how did you feel about safety? Was safety something that you were concerned about? And if so, how did you kind of counteract that?
So definitely I'm always very like concerned about safety, but one thing I always keep in mind is things can happen anywhere. I mean, for example, just the other day I was walking to work, and long story short, I ran into someone that had a gun that, you know, was obviously up to no good with a gun. I had to run. Or, you know, just here in my home city, I before have been like robbed at gunpoint, or things have happened. So I just keep in mind that where I live, it's just as dangerous as anywhere else. It just, you know, I'm more familiar with like my hometown, but I'm just very cautious about like my surroundings when I travel, especially in a foreign country where English is not the primary language.
Right.
I try not to act like a tourist. Like I'll have like the maps on my phone, but I try not to look around so people can see that I'm not from here. I don't flash anything crazy. I don't go out late at night by myself. I stay in like the more populated areas. And you know, of course, like there are some countries that I wouldn't go to by myself, but like Europe and like other places like this, like I definitely love going to. And it's like obviously like safer than some other countries.
Yeah. And that's a really good point, where you really want to blend in and kind of act the part. And you know, even though a lot of these places may be very used to accommodating tourists, you don't necessarily really want to stand out as a tourist either, because I've ran into this, and I'm sure you have as well. There's a lot of like scammers out there. You know, they see a tourist and they think they could run this scam on you, either with like providing you with a ride somewhere, if they're a taxi, or, you know, if they're trying to sell you something along those lines. And I tell you, it's just, I've seen a lot of people out there who just really act the part of being a tourist very well. They'll wear like American flags like on their shirt, or even worse, they will have like a t-shirt or a jersey of their hometown sports team with their last name printed like on the back. And I'm like, man, you are just really selling the part that you're a tourist, aren't you?
They always say in New York that you should never wear an I Heart NY like merchandise because it just screams tourist. And, you know, there's like a lot of pickpockets and stuff in New York. But yeah, I think it's definitely about trying to like blend in and not look like you're not from here, because, you know, like pickpocketers or scammers and everything, they prey off tourists. And so, yeah, I'm just like cautious about like my destination on where I go, and, you know, try and like not have like my camera out. Like I'll keep it in a bag and only pull it out like if I need to take like some pictures and stuff.
Yeah, no, definitely. And that's another thing I noticed too. And I'm not sure what it is with some people when they want to like flaunt the gear that they have. Like when I was in West Africa, for instance, one time, there was this man sitting on like this table, like at an outdoor cafe. He's working on his laptop. He's got his iPhone sitting right next to him, and he's got his really expensive Canon DSLR camera like sitting behind his laptop. And I'm thinking to myself, dude, what are you doing?
Yeah. I'm as low key as they get. I'll have everything hidden. Like, I mean, even here, like I don't have like expensive jewelry, but like all like my real jewelry, I'll keep like in my house when I like go and travel. And, you know, I won't be like wearing just anything that will attract attention, because I think that's when, you know, you start attracting problems or like pickpocketers and stuff.
Right. Yeah. Because people's eyes are just drawn to flashy stuff like that, aren't they? So yeah. For sure. All right. So now when you kind of first started going out there and traveling the world, what were some of the initial places that you went to? Can you kind of just sort of take us through some of your early travel memories and where it is you went?
So when I first left the country, I went to Canada, and it actually wasn't that long ago that I started traveling like internationally, because I mean, I've traveled almost the whole entire United States, but it was in 2019, January 2019, and I drove into Canada and explored Vancouver for a few days. And then after that, I just remember, I mean, I've always loved traveling, but I don't know what I was going through in my life at that moment, but like I just had this urge to go. So I flew to Bellingham and then drove in Washington, and then drove into Canada. Was only there for like 2 or 3 days. And then as I was coming back into Washington to fly back to Las Vegas, I was just like, man, like I just really want to go to Europe. And I was like, where's somewhere I want to go? And I was like, Italy. Within 2 weeks, I was on the next plane out. I didn't even plan anything. I just bought the plane ticket and I went to Italy for 2 weeks by myself. And yeah, after that, I've mostly stuck to Europe because I'm from Europe. So since I haven't been back, like I've been kind of trying to, you know, like explore my own continent.
Yeah.
And then I've been to Mexico a few times, and Bali and Singapore, and then hopefully more travels coming this summer. But obviously the pandemic kind of halted everything for a bit.
Yeah, for sure. Now, when you go about planning your travels, how do you go about doing that? And I guess what I mean by that is, do you get very, very meticulous with your planning, or are most of your travels kind of a bit more spontaneous, kind of like what you described when you went to Italy on 2 weeks notice? I guess when you decide you want, because that's another thing I noticed too, because is that I'll see you on like Facebook or something, like you'll post something about, oh my gosh, this school assignment is so crazy. And then like next week, all right, about to board the plane to Mexico. And I'm like, wow, well, that kind of seemed to come out of nowhere. But so I guess I'm just kind of curious, like how you actually go about planning your travels and adventures.
So definitely more spontaneous. I'm just like one person that I'll just jet off whenever I truly feel like it. Um, but I definitely, especially for like bigger trips, I'll plan out an outline before I go of like things to do, sights to see, but I never like really stick to it. I just know like I kind of want to have an idea of where
Right.
I'm going, but like I kind of live by the saying, if you want to make God laugh, make a plan. So I never try and actually make a plan because they never go as planned, like to begin with. So yeah, I'll usually just before I go, I'll do research on the destination and, like cool places to see and things to do and places to eat because I love food. So that's also one of the number ones I like look up. But like when I get there, I kind of just go as like I kind of just go with the flow, depending if I meet people, I end up, going out with them and doing things or just hearing from locals, different things to do instead of like what I did find on the internet. So I would say I'm definitely more of a free spirit with my travels.
Yeah. And I also find that that's kind of a little bit more of a fulfilling way to go about it, because I remember when I first started traveling domestically here in the US and I would visit a city like Chicago, I actually would draft out a detailed like itinerary. It's like, okay, I want to go to the Field Museum between 11 and 1 and then head to the aquarium from like 1 to 3 or whatever. But then I come to find that I don't really want to leave the museum just yet. I mean, I still have these other wings that I need to go see. And day one of the actual trip, I'm just crumpling up that itinerary and I just throw it away because it was actually just kind of an annoyance trying to rush through things. It's just I wanted just to, like you said, kind of just go with it and just see what's out there. I mean, because it's like the last thing you want to do is just try to add additional stress because it's already like stressful enough sometimes just trying to get to some of these destinations with, if you run into like, let's say flight delays or other issues along the way, Yeah.
And I definitely think one of the best ways that if this is a tip that I try and give anyone, one of the best ways to travel is, yes, to have like kind of an idea of like what to do, but like talk to locals and like people that live there about what there's to do and like places to eat and like whatever. Because if anyone's going to know the country or city or whatever, it's going to be them. So I always try and talk to people and, see what they recommend that maybe is just like not on the internet.
Yeah, because you know that if you're trying to do research on a certain place via the internet or a guidebook or anything like that, chances are it is going to be something that caters to tourists, meaning that if you go there, it's going to be probably like filled up with tourists to the brim. And it's kind of hard to have that local experience and really take in the place or the city or the town, wherever it is you're visiting in and of itself. But I do like that idea. Like you mentioned, if you talk to locals, they'll say, okay, well, that place that, I don't know, that website said has the best pizza does not really have the best pizza. Go a few blocks up the road and go to this place. They got the best pizza. And a local would know.
The way to go.
Yeah, definitely. So, all right. Well, let's kind of talk about your style of travel, as I say. And, strangely enough, I'm not sure how many of my guests I've actually asked this question, but I feel like it's kind of basic because, there's many ways we can actually get out there and explore, right? I mean, we could go by ourselves. We could travel with others. We could join up with a tour group. There's a lot of, you can do urban-based travel or nature-based travel. But what is your usual style? It seems like you might kind of have a good mix of things that you like to see, but I'll kind of like turn that over to you. How do you like going out and seeing the world?
So my most preferred way of traveling is definitely by myself. Not that I don't like traveling with people like I do, but I just like being on my own time and doing like what I want to do and just really spending time with myself. But sometimes I will also enjoy trips with like good friends of mine, to be able to share memories together. I don't know, honestly, about my kind of travel. I would say it's kind of all of them because I love like visiting cities, but I also like nature and beaches and more nature as well. So I don't know. That's honestly such a tough question about what kind of travel because honestly, I would say all of it. Like sometimes I like luxury travel and like staying in like super nice hotels, and other times I'll just love staying in like a hostel and like meeting people there and then just like going off. So I think it really depends on my mood during that trip. Like
Yeah.
one I remember for I went to France and Amsterdam for 2 weeks, and I packed like two big suitcases. And then when I was in Amsterdam, I had to buy like a third suitcase to bring home because I was just buying like all this stuff. But then I went to Singapore and Bali for 2 weeks, and I brought like barely a carry-on.
Mm.
So
Gotcha. Yeah. Speaking of hostels, you just kind of made me think of something. It's just, especially throughout my 20s, whenever I would travel to Europe, hostels were the way to go for me, especially, because not only is it a more budget friendly option, but like you said, you get to meet other travelers, kind of get their ideas, hear their stories. But I think now if I'm ever going to stay in a hostel, I think I'm going to put in the extra money for a private room. I don't mind doing the shared bathroom thing, but I don't know if I could do the whole, try to like get a good night's sleep in a bunk room with 4 bunks and people are stumbling in like in the late hours or getting up early to pack to go to the airport. At least that's just me, I'd say.
I've had my stories with hostel. Last time I stayed in a hostels was in Paris, and this lady actually attacked me. She was my roommate, and she was crazy. She ended up like getting kicked out, but I still have scars from her biting me. And I was like my
What
first
the
night in
hell?
Paris. I was jet lagged. Yeah, I just flew in like maybe 7 hours ago, and I was super jet lagged, and then had to go to a hospital because she bit me in the middle of a pandemic. And I was like, okay, so I mean, I'll still stay in hostels. I don't mind, but I definitely probably would pay extra money for a shared room because you never know who you're going to stay with.
God, okay, that is definitely a first to come up on the podcast, Caressa. I mean, getting bit by someone. I mean,
Yeah,
well, I mean, I'm hoping this virus doesn't have vampiric tendencies among some people or
it,
something.
it was pretty crazy. Security had to come up, and ultimately, she was like, she just wasn't right in the head, and
Mm.
so she and like the front desk, they said that they've seen her like before, and then she just like is always causing problems. So
Oh,
yeah.
very interesting. Yeah, that's another thing too. Hostels can be hit or miss depending on the type of people like that you meet there. For the most part, though, everyone that I've met there has at a hostel has been really, really cool. They're just
Yeah.
they're just trying to see a place as well. They're in the same mindset as you. They want to travel and save a little bit of money and things like that. But I've had some questionable people myself. Not nearly to the extent as you have, where someone's trying to like turn me into a vampire or anything like that. But just people. Like eyeing my like paying too much attention to my stuff. They'll be like, "Ooh, that's a really nice camera," and I'm thinking to myself, "Should I bring it with me when I go out to dinner? Because is it going to be here when I get back?" And then there was this one hostel I stayed at where this guy had been in this room for literally like 2 weeks because he like lost his house and was shacking up at this hostel. So he paid like to stay in this room for like 2 weeks. And so like one side of his room was like set up like his bedroom, basically. He had like shelves and like all full of stuff. And he didn't seem too thrilled about the fact that I was invading his space, so hit or miss for sure.
Definitely hit or miss.
Yeah. All righty. Well, so we kind of talked about some of the places that you've been to. You mentioned that you like to go out and see parts of Europe, Canada, Mexico, and also several places in and around the U.S. as well. But let's talk about some of the highlights. And I know this is probably a bit of a loaded question because, as travelers, we get to see so many amazing things. But I guess just off the top of your head, what are a few major highlights from your travels and adventures?
Few highlights. Oh no, I'm having such a hard time with this question.
Well, it is a hard question. I mean, let's be honest here.
I would say, I know this is gonna sound like probably cliche as well, but like just any trip I take is meeting people and like learning about their culture and just like really opening up my eyes to, like how different where I live is. And, obviously we are very privileged here in America. So when I've been to like poorer countries, it just really makes me feel grateful for like what I do have. And then my heart goes out to people that aren't as lucky as us. But I would say like me just learning about different cultures is probably like the best highlight of any trip. But yeah, besides that, just like exploring and getting to see everything, like just different sides and being able to learn about like history. Cause I'm like big on history. So when I went to Rome and I was in the Colosseum and, like I had a tour guide and he was like explaining, which I kind of like knew before about the history behind the Colosseum and everything, but he was explaining like in detail, like what happened back in that time period. And to me, it was absolutely fascinating to be able to stand like where all these things like went down. But yeah, so when it travels, I would say like those are my highlights, just exploring different things and learning about, history.
Yeah, definitely. It does allow you a fresh perspective on life, doesn't it? And, going back to the point where if you go to like, let's say a developing country, like when I went to the Gambia for Peace Corps, and just how a lot of my day while living there was committed to just making sure I had the basics covered, making sure that I was able to collect water and, filter the water so it's safe enough for me to drink. And, just it would take like hours for my host mothers. I actually had host mothers. My host father there had 2 wives. Polygamy was a thing there. It was kind of interesting. But it would take them hours to just like cook some rice for the family. They would actually have an actual wood fire, like an actual fire with a cauldron full of rice that they would make. And then it was kind of hard for me though, coming back from that because, it was working so hard to cover the basics. And then I come back and people are complaining about like their food taking too long at a restaurant or the line at Starbucks being too long or what have you. So I was kind of curious to ask you then, just getting a chance to get out there and experiencing these different cultures. And like you mentioned, seeing what it's like for people in other parts of the world. Did you by chance have like an instance of like, I'd say reverse culture shock when you came back to the US and kind of had to just sort of, I say, get readjusted to just what it's like in a first world country again? Did you experience anything like that?
Not necessarily, no. I mean, I've been here so long when I come back, it's kind of like, okay, I'm home. But I do get what you're saying about, like you come back and people are complaining about their food or, just small things. It really opens my eyes to how privileged we're. Like when I went to Bali and I went out of the tourist areas, and even in the tourist areas, it's not like, it's still like a poor country. And there are like people walking without shoes on and just like carrying things like up these huge hills trying to make it back to their house. And I just kept on thinking like here we can just have groceries delivered to us. And like you said, then I come back and people are just complaining about the smallest things. So, I mean, I don't know if you'd call that a reverse culture shock, but if so, then yeah. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so I don't know. We're definitely very lucky over here, though.
Yeah, for sure. And so those are some of the highlights. And another thing I'm always kind of curious to ask my guests about are challenges and misadventures. Because I think sometimes these make for really good stories, albeit they're not catastrophic instances, that we faced. And you kind of cued us in on what happened to you at this hostel where this woman went into vampire mode on you. I'm just rolling with that vampire thing. I don't know why. That's just so funny, but not to laugh at your misery or anything. But besides that, though, do you by chance have any other like challenges or misadventures that really stand out in your mind? And if you wouldn't mind sharing, I guess, what do you think those would be?
I remember one time in Italy. Well, no, actually, I've been to Italy a few times. The first time I went to Italy, and I just got off the plane. I took the train, and I was trying to go to my hostel, which was by the Termini station. And I had asked at the airport, like, where I'm supposed to go. And the person told me a complete wrong way. And I don't know if he like meant to do it to mess with me, or like he just really didn't know, because he didn't speak good English. So I'm on this train. I have like 2 suitcases with me. And in Italy, like it's already hard because like the floor is like cobblestone. So it's like hard to like pull suitcases. So I'm on this train for about like 45 minutes, and there's just something in my gut, which kind of also like for anyone listening, just always make sure to follow your gut, because it's usually right.
Right.
So something in my gut was telling me that I was going the wrong way, and I couldn't shake the feeling. And I was just like, okay, like maybe I should get off. So I got off the train, and I don't even know where I was, but it was not like a city or anything like close to Rome. And so I'm just like, okay, I don't think like I know where I am. And come to think back of it now, I didn't even try to look it up on my maps on Google, because it didn't even cross my mind. I don't know, maybe I didn't even have reception, but I started panicking because I don't speak Italian. All I learned how to say was like buongiorno. So I was like going around to people with my luggage, and I was trying to ask for like directions and help, and not a single person spoke English. And they just looked at me like I was crazy. And I almost started crying because I was like, oh my God, like my first day here, I'm lost in Italy. And so finally I found one person that barely spoke English, like maybe a few words. And I was like pointing to like where I was supposed to go. And then somehow he got it through to me where I was supposed to go. And it was like about an hour from where I was. And sure enough, the guy told me like the wrong way to go. So that was definitely a fun adventure. But when I just got off like a 12-hour flight, I didn't find it that much fun at first.
Oh, no, neither would I, gal dang. And then of course, if you're getting further and further away from the city to some of those more rural areas, I would imagine finding someone that would speak English would be harder to come by too.
Yeah, it was pretty scary. And then like, I was so frustrated because I was trying to pull my luggage, and like the wheels, they kept on hitting the like cobblestones, and it was just like such a bumpy ride for my luggage. And I was just like after that, I was done. I just wanted to go to sleep and then like wake up for a new day. So, but luckily I found my way back, and, very thankful for that man that helped me wherever he is at today. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah. Now, I'm guessing like that didn't deter your trip, the remainder of the trip. I mean, were you kind of sort of able to shake off that experience and still have a good time for the rest of your trip in Italy? Or did you kind of think that was one of those instances where it's like, screw this, I don't want to be here anymore after this awful experience? What was that like for you?
Absolutely not. I had a blast after that.
Okay.
I ended up stayed for a while in Rome, and then went to Pisa and Florence. And my dad was actually in Italy at the time too. So, I mean, I didn't stay with him most of the time because he was in another part, but I ended up taking a train for like a few days to go see him, which I cannot remember the city that he was staying in, but that was also fun.
Okay. So, all right. Very, very, very good. All right. So what I kind of want to ask you about next, kind of sort of fast forwarding into the present, you and I, we were kind of sort of talking about before we hit record here that, you got a lot going on, in your life right now, everything from being a new homeowner, you're going to school, you're trying to work as well, and then try to fit in travels whenever you can. So kind of what I want to ask you is, how do you sort of kind of go about striking a balance to where you're able to do all the things that you need to do, fulfill your obligations effectively, but still, of course, finding that downtime to like to go travel to, let's say, Mexico, or take a road trip here or road trip there? How do you kind of sort of go about everything so you can still fit in travel today?
So I am and I guess this can be a bad thing, a very impulsive person. So, I mean, I'm trying to plan my trip out for this summer, but so I'll kind of just try and get like all my responsibilities, like everything lined up, and then knock them out one by one. And then when I see like a little bit of an open window, I try and take a trip somewhere. But also, I have been known, like, notoriously to just give up on all my responsibilities and just go. Because sometimes I'll get in like a mindset where I'm like, I'll start thinking, oh my God, I can die tomorrow. Like, what am I doing? And then I'm just like, I have to go. I have to travel, which is definitely not something I'm like people should be doing, because it has come back to bite me. But yeah, so I don't know. It just, again, really depends how I'm feeling, because I'm a very, very spontaneous person. So sometimes, even like with all my responsibilities, I'll just be like, I'm taking a break. Because in the end, like, we're not all in charge of like our own lives and stuff. So I try not to let everyday struggles like completely overrun my life to where I'm putting everything first and like in front of what I want to do.
Right. And, I think there's a bit of a dichotomy to that, where it's like, yes, you don't want to totally neglect responsibilities that you have in your life. But at the same time, if you just keep grinding away at things, whether it's work and everything, if you grind something too long, it becomes dust. Right. And so it's really kind of hard to do anything. And then we also got to keep in mind, though, is that, our time on this earth is limited. We're not vampires, so we're not. I'm really digging that vampire analogy. So we're not a
vampire. I don't know.
It's like, so we're not immortal. Our time on this earth is going to run out, and we're not getting any younger. So, and then I've often found, and I'm curious to ask you this too, is that when I say things like, okay, I'll just do that trip next month, or I'll do it next week or whatever, that short window of time that I say I'm going to do it, it turns into a year, and then a year turns into a few years. And then eventually I just end up not doing it at all. And that's kind of a tough break when you realize that you've put off something for that long. I don't suppose, has that happened to you at all? And maybe is that why you kind of like to be a little bit more spontaneous when it comes to going out and traveling?
For me, honestly, it's more reverse. Like, I'll say, I'll do this trip in 6 months, and then a month later I'm going.
Mm.
So me, it's like completely opposite, because I'll just get this like random urge to just like go. And then I'll look at my life and I'll just be like, okay, like, realistically, can I go or not? Like, I might have some responsibilities, but then I'll put them on like, how important are these responsibilities? Can they wait a month? Like, do I need to do it now, or like, and then depending like where they fall, sometimes I'll be like, okay, like, I really can't go right now. Like, I'll wait, a few months. But usually my responsibilities, they're never that crazy to where they can't wait. So then I'll be like, okay, I'm going. And then so the trip I'm supposed to take in 6 months will end up being like next week.
Okay. Very, very good. I think that's another first to come up on the podcast too, kind of that more reverse prioritization type sort of setup. I like that. That's actually, I think, a good way to go about doing it, because it's like, why wait? Exactly. Why wait on doing things that make you happy?
If you're to me, if my priorities aren't like dire, and it's like, let's say, so I just bought a house, I've been renovating it. And, I have like a big like to-do list for my house, but if like one of my priorities for my house, it's to like get new counters, I'd be like, okay, well, can the counters wait for a month? And it's like, yeah, it can. Okay. So like, let me just go. So yeah, I definitely try and like when I'm thinking about taking a trip, I look at my responsibilities and how important they are. But like, because again, like, we can die any day. So I just like live by this. I don't ever want to like miss out on chances like in life, considering that we're here for a limited period of time.
And quick side thing here. Speaking of renovations on your house, it's kind of seeing some of the stories that you posted. I think my favorite part of your house so far definitely has to be your travel map wall
Oh
that you
my
have.
God, I love
Yeah, I guess, I mean, that's like, well, not only is it very visually appealing because, you got the whole world map and then you got the strings or the lines or whatever extending to different photos from those places. And I'm like, that is a really, really cool idea. I might have to steal that from you once I buy my own house someday.
absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely like I actually got two lights put into the ceiling that before, like when I was renovating my house specifically for that map. So I had that vision in my head for quite a long time. And I actually, because if you look at it up close, it's kind of there's pieces that I didn't put on right. So I actually bought another map so I can fix that, which is one of my house priorities.
All right. Very, very good. All right. So, what I have for you next is, and one of the things that I also like to ask my guests is, some of the takeaways and life lessons that we learned from our travels and adventures, because we kind of talked a little bit about some of them, of course. You talked about just the perspective you got with going to other places, and then of course you kind of had to become a little bit of a problem solver too when you run into sticky situations like with what you were describing in Italy with the train. But what are some of your other major takeaways and life lessons that you've been able to take away from your travel experiences that you've been able to incorporate into your own life? And again, that's probably another one of these loaded questions, but I guess I'll just once again ask you to kind of share just what sort of comes to mind.
My takeaways from my travels, and especially because I'm a huge people person, I'm very social. So anytime I travel, I talk to people and try and hear like everybody's story. But definitely some of my takeaways is to just be kind. Like you never know what someone is going through because like I just find, especially in this day and age of social media, it's so easy for people to sit behind like a computer and just be like mean for absolutely no reason. And,
Right.
when you just start like experiencing like different cultures and just like meeting people from like all kinds of like different walks of life, I think my biggest takeaway is that to just be nice and be kind and spread love to everyone.
Yeah, and then also when you're out and about traveling to different places, it's you're meeting these people face to face and in person. You're not hiding behind a screen anymore. So it'll really show. And I think this also goes along with just how important first impressions can be too. Because if you're having, let's say, a frustrating time traveling, like if something goes wrong and then you meet someone and then you just take it all out on them, you can really see the effects of that. You see like how upset they'll get with you if you do that. And but it's like if you can, actually approach someone and be nice and polite or try to speak in their language, despite how you may be feeling. It's a bit more of a powerful thing, and it does go a lot of a long way too. So yeah, I can absolutely agree with you for sure. All right. So as we've mentioned at the start of this conversation, fingers crossed there's light at the end of the tunnel. Places are going to start opening back up again and we can get out there and explore the world a little bit more fully. So what do you have on the docket for this year? I mean, is there upcoming trips that you want to take or, other adventures that you want to seek out? Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yes. So this summer, right now, it's I have a French passport. So as far as Europe, like borders closed or not, like I can just like go in. But I am hoping to go to Tokyo if the borders open up because I've never been. It's always been a dream of mine. But if everything is still kind of closed, I will be, well, right now it's a 3-week trip, but I'm thinking about making it into 2 months. I'm looking to go to France. That would kind of be a family trip. And then I would be going to England by myself and then Greece. But if it becomes a 2 months trip, Hopefully again, Tokyo is still open, but if not, I'll probably just travel around Europe and like go to Spain and Portugal and different countries over there. But my number one goal is absolutely Japan.
Well, I'm really excited for you to see Japan. Japan was actually the first country that I visited outside of the U.S. I mean, I guess technically it would be Canada, but since I'm from Michigan, Canada is just a drive across the bridge, so I don't really count it, you know. But as far as, let's say, the international experience, that involved me to get on a plane and fly across an ocean. That was Japan. So I think you'll absolutely love it, especially if you're someone who likes to interact and learn about different cultures. The culture that I experienced from the Japanese when I was there was just amazing, and also if you're a foodie too, it's gonna be like I say a rampage. I mean, there's gonna be so much good food options that you're gonna want to dive into. So I'm glad you're going there, and I'm excited for you to go there too, because I think you're gonna love it. So.
Counting down the days for Japan. Absolutely.
Okay, right on. Well, hit me up if you want any tips, and I could share some of my stories with you as well. But what I have for you next, and we're kind of starting to wind down on our time here. Another thing that I ask all my guests is to issue a challenge to our listeners, because, you know, you and I, you shared some great stories with us today. You and I, we kind of talked about a couple of interesting points to consider, but none of this doesn't really do too much for our guests if they don't follow it up with action once they're done listening to this episode. So what I want to ask you is, what challenge would you issue to our listeners for them to go out there and start living a more adventurous life?
I would say to just do it. And money comes back and time does not. You can always work for more money.
Yeah.
The second that a second passes by, you'll never see that second again. So I would say just do it and figure it out on the way. Like, if there is a will, there's a way. So my challenge would absolutely be just do it.
Right. You know, because I think many of us, and I've certainly, I'm guilty of this as well, is we try to wait for a perfect time, right?
Perfect time.
It's the stars are never going to align perfectly. So I just say, get out. Yeah. Like you said, get out there, figure it out as you go. I mean, that's how I've done this podcast. That's how I've done my archaeology career. And, you know, because it's like, if you're just waiting, again, like we've mentioned earlier, it's just going to get away from you. You're always going to find a reason to not do it.
You'll be waiting forever. And also, like, as humans, we just adapt to situations. So, like, if we're to just like get up one day and just like move out of the country, you know, just with like not a penny to our name, like, as humans, we would adapt. We would like find our way, like, to make it work, because it's in our nature to survive and, you know, make things work. So anyone that would like to travel, like, yeah, I would say to not wait anymore, because we never know when it's going to be our last day.
Yep, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Right on. All right. So what I have for you next is my final three. These are three, I like to think that they're fun questions that I ask all my guests at the end of the show. So you're going to get asked these as well. And the first of these three questions is, what is your favorite place that you've been to so far?
Oh, that's a tough one. I would probably say Bali or Hawaii.
Okay.
Oh, wait, Monaco.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Right on. And the next question, what is one thing on your bucket list that you have yet to do?
Go on a safari in Africa.
Yeah.
That is goals right there.
Yeah, you and me both. That would be absolutely amazing. And I keep seeing more and more people that I know doing that. So I'm like, okay, well, I guess I better start buckling down and getting out there myself. So all right. And speaking of animals, that kind of is what the third question entails. And that is, what is your favorite animal? And have you seen this animal in the wild?
This is going to be a boring answer, but I'm going to have to say dog. A dog. Because I'm actually terrified of wildlife. And not like terrified of like mostly terrified of wildlife that can hurt you. So I really don't have a favorite animal that's in the wild, but I do love dogs. So that is my answer and what I'm sticking with.
Oh, okay.
Not that exciting, but
okay. I'm a bit of the opposite. I like seeing animals in the wild, and even like apex predators. Like here in Florida, we have a lot of alligators, right, that I've seen in the wild, and I'll admire them from a distance, of course, but I just always am just so awestruck just in how like powerful these creatures are, and just what Mother Nature has produced in this way. It's a dinosaur effectively, or what these are. But I know what you mean, though. I know what you mean. So
if I wasn't scared of the animals, I would probably go with a lion because they're really majestic. But since I am,
the doggos are up next, huh?
Yeah, they are.
All right, very, very good. All right, well, Caresa, that's it. That's all the questions that I have for you today. But before we call it a day here, where can our listeners reach out and connect with you? I know you're out there in like the internet and the social media space where you're kind of sharing your adventures. So yeah, where can our listeners find you?
So my Instagram is at @thisspontaneouslife_, which it's usually the platform I'm most active on. And I also have a blog where I share travel tips, and that is thisspontaneouslife.com. But those are the two platforms where anyone can reach me or message me if they have any questions.
Okay. And I'll get those linked up in the show notes so that the listeners can go and find them there. Well, Caresa, I want to thank you very much for taking the time for joining me today. I know you have a busy weekend right now, and there's obviously a lot that you're trying to catch up on with, like I said, moving into the new house and doing school and whatnot. And it's definitely been a long time coming getting you on the podcast, but I'm glad we were able to make this work. I just had a really great time chatting with you and hearing your stories. So yeah, just thanks for being here and sharing this with myself and the listeners today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Right on.
Have a great day.
You too.